Okay.
Start recording.
I guess we're right on time right now.
Yep. We can wait another minute or two until a few more people join in, but you look like you're doing pretty well.
Everyone's hunkered down. I mean, I'm used to working from home. This is not very new to me, but it's it sure is a little bit challenging. You can't meet people, you can't go to the office.
Right.
Yeah.
But hey, we have technology to connect us.
We do, right? I think a lot of people realize that we don't need to go anywhere.
That's kind of scary.
It is.
Well, how about let me introduce you so I don't cut into any of your time, and
Sure.
we'll get started because it looks like we have. It's growing by the second. We've got 35 people, and it just keeps growing. So I will watch out for any questions that come in, and then I'll just relay them to you so you don't have to concentrate on that.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. But welcome everybody for joining us on this afternoon. We're very fortunate to have Shirleen Chin with us. I'm just going to read her bio because there's too much for me to remember. She's done so much. So I'm just going to read her bio from Global Initiatives. Shirleen is originally from Malaysia. She's an international legal expert working on matters related to environmental crime, international criminal law, illicit trade, anti-corruption, organized crime, and economic crimes. Do you have a cooking show too or something? I think there's everything else in there. So you do everything. She worked largely in the nonprofit sector with some years in the private sector. She holds a BA in Business and Management and LLB cum laude in Public International Law and Human Rights, and an MBA in International Business. She's currently the Managing Director of Green Transparency, a firm that provides clients with the tools and expertise they need to effectively manage their environmental strategies. And she is coming to us live from The Hague in the Netherlands. So there's much more to be said about Shirleen, but I'm going to let her tell you all those good things. So without further ado, Shirleen, it's all yours.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your very busy day. Apparently everyone's staying at home. I'm just kidding. To listen to me talk a little bit. So I'm more interested in your questions to me than I am interested talking about myself, to be honest. But yes, thanks Howie for inviting me to talk with some of your students. Indeed, I'm here in the Netherlands. I'm based in The Hague. The Hague is called the City of Peace and Justice. It was about 11 years ago when I moved here to study law. While I was a law student, I went through a number of internships, mainly because one of the students a year ahead of me said it's really difficult to find an internship. So you better start early. I started in year 3. There are 4 years in total. I started looking for an internship in year 3. I started the internship with a think tank based here in The Hague, an environmental think tank. And everything pretty much snowballed from there because shortly afterwards I was accepted I was invited to do an internship with the Dutch Ministry for Economic Affairs. And there I looked at trade issues and whatnot with them. And also eventually I did another internship with another university where I organized a moot court on international law that comprises students from all over the world, and they compete with one another where the UN court is, which is the International Court of Justice. That was my third internship. My fourth internship was with a consultancy firm that consults with big international organizations like the OECD and the ILO, which is the International Labor Organization. And with them, I did a research on, human rights, or let's see, labor conditions on inland navigation. So we're looking at vessels that traverse the rivers in Europe. So basically I did a report for them. So in total I did like 4 internships before I graduated. so much for that warning about, yeah, it's really hard to find an internship. It's not that hard if you, in my opinion, if you know the right people and you've done good enough a job that people would recommend you for another internship or, a best case scenario job. So all the time that during the time that I did all four internships, I always stuck with the first one. So with the first one, I found sort of like my comfort zone. And in the nonprofit sector and the environmental sector, I think it only fit it fit quite perfectly because I'm from Malaysia originally, from an island where deforestation has been happening for decades, and basically deforestation, which is attributed to, let's say, organized crime, kleptocracy, corruption, and having the legal tools to now understand what needs to be done to combat issues like that, like the one back home, environmental crimes and whatnot. Yeah, I found that this was the track that I was going to stay on, and I've been on it since. So I would first definitely say that sometimes it's not the affiliation that you have that will elevate you or give you that stepping stone to doing something great, but it's really your determination, your passion about a topic, and how much knowledge you have and how many people you meet out there. My job with some of my let's say clients or my nonprofit partners is to connect with people, making sure that you organize the best events with the brightest and the best people, the most relevant people in the room, so that they can come together, brainstorm, and come up with solutions to contemporary issues like the stuff that I deal with is climate change, climate crime, ecocide, environmental crime, but all with a certain knowledge. At least from my point of view, I do have knowledge about international business, and I do have a passion for fighting organized financial, economic, white collar crime. And more and more I began to see like the overlap, the crosslap between environmental crime and organized crime. But sad to say, I don't think that there is one legal avenue out there that deals with environmental crime and governance or corporate governance issues in the same box. So part of the reason why I set up my consultancy is to make sure that these two areas are addressed simultaneously as opposed to in silos as they usually do. Yeah, I don't know what else I can talk about, Howie. Can you give me some cues maybe? And tell me if I'm breaking up also.
You're breaking up just a little bit. Your audio is coming through perfectly, but every once in a while you freeze on the screen, but otherwise it's fine.
Okay.
Maybe you can just talk about some of your work, some of the specific cases. I know that you've worked prosecuting the mafia, for instance, in Italy with environmental crimes, and you've worked on with the United Nations, not obviously in a courtroom setting, but in other settings. And you're really energetic about and enthusiastic about making environmental rights, raising it to the status of a human right. And so maybe if you could just talk about any of those areas and just give a little bit of an idea of some of the things that you've done and what students who might be thinking about going to law school, what they could do in these areas, the need for them. Did we lose you?
I lost you. I was listening. The need for what did you say?
The need for students in this area, in the areas that you work.
Yeah. Okay. To start off, about the Italian mafia. So I was involved in a research project that was funded by the European Union on environmental crime. And in the process of doing this research with other universities around Europe and other think tanks, we did a research on the waste problem in Italy. in the south of Italy in particular. And it's been widely known and for a very long time now that the mafia manages waste in Italy. It's no surprise that the mafia also organizes, waste everywhere else in the world, including the United States. Now, I always like to say that one man's trash is another man's treasure. And this plays out very, very well with the Italian mafias. Now, a ruling came out late 2010. I would say around 2008, a ruling came out from the European Court of Justice. And the European Court of Justice is, let's say, almost a supranational court that oversees EU legislations in terms of implementation and enforcement in the various EU member states. And there is an EU waste framework directive, which is an EU legislation. And that piece of law obliges EU member states to make sure that waste is disposed responsibly and sustainably, adhering to, health standards, environmental standards and whatnot. And in there, it also, usually it gives, especially because the EU is open to membership, right? And as long as a country in the European region meets those few criteria, they can say sign up to be an EU member state. So the EU allows for, when a new legislation comes to pass, the EU allows a sort of like a window of time for the country to adjust, let's say a couple of years. But this EU Waste Framework Directive has been around for quite some time. And Italy is famous, at least in the south of Italy, is very famous for its waste problem. Like you would go to Sicily, you'd be driving down the streets and you'd see trash everywhere. And in that region, it is organized by the Camorra and 'Ndrangheta mafia clans. And basically what happened in the past was that because they run the waste business, they were hired by the government to dispose of waste. Now, what did they do with the waste? Instead of disposing it responsibly and paying to get it, recycled and cleaned before burning it or before burying it or before diluting it in acid, they just dumped it. They just dug a hole and dumped it in the ground. And basically around that region, a lot of cases have come up about, babies prematurely dying because of, radiation and all that. So it's a serious health issue in that area. Now, the European Court of Justice, knowing that Italy has failed to deal with that waste problem related to the health problem of the people there, they came out of a ruling saying that, okay, from now on, this is a court order. Italy, you need to clean up the 112 or 113 sites that we identified, X number of years ago. And for every day that you don't do this, or for 6 months from now, if you don't do this, we'll impose another fee on you, and then another fee for every day that you fail to clean up the sites. Now, the question now is, and that was the reason why I was interviewed on Euronews. The question was then in my head, before I went on the interview, that ruling came out and we didn't have time to discuss it on the program. But basically, now that the government of Italy is forced to clean up their waste, that buried it in the ground in the first place, so it's double profits.
Could you repeat
you
that,
sort
Shirleen? You broke up.
I'm sorry.
Could you
where was
that
I?
last little bit, because you broke up just as you were saying what the mafia did?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically, the Italian government needs to again turn to the very same companies that dumped the waste there, because they're still in charge. So they had to turn to the companies run by the mafia that put the trash in the ground in the first place. That's double profit for them. Now, these sort of issues really, really make me consider, either amending the law or having a stronger, say, whistleblower legislation on these types of things. Like, but you don't mess with the mafia, right? But there are prosecutors and judges in Italy who are very strong-willed in this issue, and they did pass a bill on waste in Italy nationally upon that judgment. Yeah, I mean, that's the one about the mafia. And the second question that Howie asks is about my work with the UN. So, a lot of students out there, a lot of people out there, without knowing, without having experienced how it's like to be in a UN building, office, institution, how things work, they always aspire to, like, yes, I would like to work for the UN. They're great. They're a great organization. I also believe so. Now, but I myself, I was one of those people who tried to look for a job with the UN, at the UN, but I was never dejected because I found myself in this field having to work with, people in the UN anyways. Like, I'm in conversation with the UN Special Rapporteur for human rights and the environment right now. I've also been invited by UN Environment on some of their events in Geneva, and then of course the climate conferences that I attended, like last year in Madrid, and also the UN's yearly General Assembly in September in New York on sustainable development goals. So these are the ways that I find, even though I'm not working for the UN, I find that working side by side with them is also just as rewarding, you see, and you kind of build your own network from there. And also you learn the ins and outs of these various institutions. There are some people who love the UN and some people who, upon working there, just realize, nah, this isn't it. This is not it for me. And I think one needs to always manage expectations and always, if you always need to sort of like look on the bright side of things. Now, the third issue that Howie brought up was about, say, environmental rights. But I think what Howie probably wants to emphasize more is on like my work with Extinction Rebellion here in the Netherlands, and also my work with one of the NGOs that I work with, Ecological Defense Integrity, and they are the ones who are pushing for the crime of ecocide to be recognized at the international level. With Extinction Rebellion, I got involved with them here in the Netherlands when they first started out last year, or last year, 2018, late 2018. And ever since, I've been helping them coordinate the legal stuff, like introducing them to the right criminal lawyers who would take their cases in court and who would represent them if and when they do get arrested. So I also give them legal advice on, small little things, what to do, what not to do, what are some of the consequences of getting arrested if you are not a Dutch citizen, but you are an EU citizen, trivial things like that. I give them advice on. Now, the campaign behind the crime of ecocide is something that I've been working on for a number of years, since 2012, with the late Polly Higgins. Now, Polly was somebody who is recognized in the environmental field as, as the champion of the crime of ecocide. But because she dropped, she completely quit her career as a corporate lawyer in London just to pursue this, because she realizes, hey, even the law protects the most worst of criminals, right? Even they have the right to defend themselves. But what about the environment? What about the indigenous peoples that are hurt? You see, like, recourse to law only goes as far in some national jurisdictions. So she passed away. Polly passed away sadly last year in April. I think it's about a week ago, last year, we heard for the first time that she had cancer. So a few of us got together, and we've since continued her work ever since. And basically, this work on my side, at least based in The Hague, is mostly aimed at advocating for the need to introduce the crime of ecocide at the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court, the ICC, is based here in The Hague, and every year they have an annual meeting, which is called the Assembly of States Parties, and I have been adamantly at it every year, organizing side events on the crime of ecocide and having the right people come in and talk. And and I must say that last year's side event on ecocide was the most successful ever, mainly because I noticed a number of ICC staff in the room itself, and also a lot of country representatives. The side event itself was hosted by the country of Vanuatu, which is a very small island country in the south of the Pacific. And, we've been working with small island states ever since, because if they were to become members of the ICC, they have the right to vote for a new crime to be introduced, and basically for the crime to be voted into the Rome Statute, which is the governing document of the ICC. We have ourselves the crime of ecocide. So yeah. Let me see. I think the last one, Howie, you asked was, what would a student need in order to go down this path that I went on?
Yeah. Could I
yeah?
just, because there are a couple questions that relate to that, so if I can just kind of combine them. We have about
Sure.
3. So not only, because one of the questions was if someone was wishing to pursue a career in the global nonprofit sector, whether it's environmental or international, how would a law degree benefit them? But there were also questions that came in before that asked what inspired you to go to law school, and did you always want to be an international criminal law attorney, international attorney? So I think those kind of relate to what I asked. So if you can combine those into your question, what inspired you to go to law school, to go into international law, and how does the law degree benefit someone who wants to go into this field?
Yeah. Okay, sure. Thanks. Thanks for the questions, by the way. So, this career track came, I think, one, by coincidence, and also by another way of thinking, how do we solve today's world's problems, right? A law degree, in my opinion, helps in terms of the way I structure certain solutions, the way I look at problems. As a lawyer, it's very simple. You look at the issue, you look at the laws, you apply them, and you conclude. What was that? Anyways, but yeah, a law degree helps.
I just need to apologize. There's a person I had to remove because he was making very inappropriate remarks. So
okay.
And I'll remove others if you do that as well too.
Understood. Yeah, okay, I'll carry on then. So a law degree not only helps with how one thinks, and how you argue and how you present a paper or research. I don't know, I think in today's world, across faculties, I think that students need to at least know the basics of law, your own national laws, your regional laws, and if you have time, some international global affairs issues and international laws that it's up to the government to decide on this. I've got no hand in it, but you actually, oh, my connection's unstable, I'm sorry, but you actually, as citizen, do have a part to play. And did I pick this career path as an international lawyer? I mean, I would say international bracket criminal lawyer, because I'm not a practicing one, but I did deliberately choose the path of international law and human rights, because in my own personal opinion, it's very broad and very open to interpretation, and that that gives me a lot of impetus to like think creatively on solutions. Whereas in international criminal law, what I'm dealing with at the highest level is the Rome Statute, which is one institution, one governing document, and that's pretty limited in its content. But having the knowledge of international law and international criminal law and human rights all jumbled together, including some business background, I think that really helps push me forward. But it's basically about going out there and exploring, and also, with the different internships that I took, it exposed me to a different, a whole different arena of things that I never thought of. And from there I could take a pick on what I found was very beneficial for others and for myself. We have a number of Q&As. Do I open up the chats, or let me see?
You can open up the Q&A if you want to. You can see them directly.
Yeah. So let me see, how many are they? There are 8.
Again, you got some people we apparently have some trolls. So
5G tower installation. Okay, I'll answer some of them. So Lauren, you asked how does my work affect me and the people around me? Now, I work out of Europe. I'm originally from Malaysia. I'm Malaysian. People have asked me, why don't you bring your business back home and deal with the issues there? Because it's essentially also one of the issues that you want to deal with, deforestation, corruption. In some countries, I would not put myself on the line. So I would call myself more of an advocate. Like, I would like to work behind the scenes in certain things, as opposed to like activism, taking the streets and whatnot. And it's a dangerous place. If I were to bring this work home back to Malaysia, it's a dangerous place. I may be killed. My family may be threatened, and I don't want that. So using the law to address some of these problems and to call out people and call out businesses is a safer way for me, in my opinion. So I hope that answers your question, Lauren. Let me see. I can't answer on the 5G tower installation, although I do know quite a number of people from Extinction Rebellion who are quite convinced that, this is an issue, and this is an issue that they need to bring up. Helicopter, Cheetos bag, good one. Yeah, some of these are very silly questions.
Yeah, we're getting a bunch of trolls for some reason.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remove them as I can. Some are asking, to pursue a career like yours, should you be based in Europe?
It really all depends. I think that there are a number of very good nonprofits in the US itself. And I know a number of people who are working either at the Department of Justice, having studied at, smaller universities and not those Ivy League type universities. In Europe, the tuition fee for a foreigner is relatively cheaper than the tuition fee at a law school in the United States. So maybe that is one consideration that American students can make in choosing where they want to do their postgrad or where they want to do a second degree or anything like that. And Europe and the US are two different continents and two different regions, and I feel like there are plus and minuses to be based either in Europe or in America. Europe, you're familiar with like Europe being like very steady, very, very old fashioned sometimes. And it can be slow compared to America. I think that it can be slow, but also America, I mean, it all really depends on, what across the board, the same problem with, enforcing and lack of resources sometimes. So hope that answers the question. Okay, let's see. There's also some things in the chats. Yeah, Howie, do you think I should talk about anything else? Let's see. I think I see something from Suresh in the chat that asks, what are the reasons that environmental crimes tend to get linked with organized crime? Now, there are a number of organized crime. If one, I mean, I think ISIS is one very interesting thing that was brought up in the Q&A. ISIS in their spread of terror, they basically in the Middle East got a hold of the oil rigging sites in Syria. And by doing that, they had control over the fuel production. And there has been research that's been done to prove that ISIS has used the profits from selling fuel to Turkey illegally crossing the border. They have used that as part of their way of spreading terror worldwide. You can also talk about, let's say, Al-Shabaab in Africa as well, in Western Africa, and how they use charcoal, an everyday thing that we use for barbecuing, as as a trade to gaining weapons. And and also on organized crime is also recognized on fishing boats. So illegal fishing is also a huge organized crime issue, because on illegal fishing itself is an environmental crime, especially if you overfish in somebody's territory. You cook the books, you pretend to undercount undercount your catch. Now, illegal fishing is also used as a means of trafficking humans. So there are people who are working on these boats who are modern day slaves, or people who are victims of human trafficking. So that is a problem in and of itself. And also, like, if we're talking illegal logging as an environmental crime, the logs that are transported across borders, they may contain other things. They may contain drugs. They may contain anything else related to organized crime. So we're talking a whole bunch of issues here. Let's see. Yeah.
And how much some of the students are asking some legitimate questions now that I've gotten rid of the inappropriate ones. It took me a little while. Sorry about that. They're asking how much travel do you have to do as part of this job? How essential is it to know other languages?
So I travel only when necessary for the job itself. I mean, of course, I think a lot of people like traveling itself. Some people would say it's counter to the whole climate movement, but I really think that traveling for a specific need, there are many pluses to being in person. There are many pluses to being even for me, in my line of work, I connect with a lot of people. I can get meetings the day before, and I can, so I basically, they say to replace this phrase, I basically water many plants with one watering can. So that's what I do when I do travel. The monetary freedom to travel abroad at my leisure. As a freelancer, yes, I get to manage my own schedule. So that's a good plus for me, but it's also a challenge if you don't really have a fixed time or an office setting where you can really truly focus on your work. I find it especially challenging if I do need to write a piece or I need to do a research on something. If I'm traveling too much, I need to take time off. And, it's always nice to be in The Hague. It's always nice to be here in the Netherlands. You've got a lot of resources, and the library is really close if I need to, any references. About languages, I really don't think that that's necessary. Even being here in the Netherlands, I speak and I understand Dutch, but my working language is in English. Of course, there are companies, organizations in other parts of the world who require a language or two, but I don't think it's necessary to know any other languages. It's an advantage, definitely. But English is a good start.
And when you were, one of the questions is about what does your day look like when you're working on cases, and so what's a typical day for you? And also they were wondering about when you were prosecuting the mafia, did you feel threatened yourself? Were you concerned?
So I myself didn't prosecute the mafia. I mean, that is all left to the national judges in Italy to prosecute, to go after. It is still very challenging. I don't think any one of them has been taken down, even with the introduction of the bill on waste in Italy. And let me see. What was the other one again? It was about what does my daily what's my daily schedule like? Well, I almost get up whenever I want, but I do set an alarm. Most of my day is occupied with emails, responding to emails, following up on certain meetings, um, chasing down sometimes no replies that I really, really want to work on. I this year itself, I've been doing quite a number of writing. So I'll be writing also for Harvard Law School in a bit on ecocide. Otherwise, like time at a time like this last year, it was organizing with other partners on trainings that I would conduct. I believe that was around the time that I got to know Howie also last year. Or attending conferences and meetings or things that are happening around here in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Do you feel if a student was really interested after hearing this talk and saying, okay, I want to try some of those things, there are thousands of things that you seem to be doing all at once. What's an area where maybe they would concentrate? Where would you say, here's a good area to go into? You've graduated as either as an undergraduate or maybe you've gone on to law school. Here's an area you can go into, and can you make a living in that field as well?
I think it really depends on where you live, and I must say that in Europe the standard of living is much better than, let's say, Malaysia back home, where an average paycheck will not be enough to pay for your car, your house, your daily expenses, and anything else, like with very little saving, very little to no savings at all. And over here, it's a little bit different. Since I was here as a student, I've experienced that, okay, this is probably the best chance where I can make a fair living. I wouldn't say that working in a nonprofit or working as a freelancer makes me the richest person in the world, but it definitely is very, very fulfilling. To have certain things, expenses alleviated by some of my NGO partners, that always helps in reducing some of my expenses. It's a myth when they say nonprofit is nonprofit. Nonprofit just basically means, depending on how experienced you are, you get a different rate for the hour or for the day. And I have gained enough experience that my original rate when I was an intern has gone up. So as a freelancer, I can use that as a basis of how much, for how much they would have to pay me at the end of the project or upon the end of the consultation, for instance. So yeah, in bigger nonprofits, like, you can definitely make a very comfortable, living as a nonprofit employee. Yeah.
And if there are more questions, please submit them as long as they're appropriate. So let's make sure it's that. You were recently, was it just last month, named by Vogue Spain as one of the top women making a difference for communities. Can you talk a little bit about your community activism?
So I would say my community is, I usually like to champion the underdogs. People's voices heard. So that was one of the reasons why I ended up in Madrid last December, where I got an email saying that Vogue wants an interview. So Vogue interviewed me and a number of other female ladies who are doing, their own things in their own regions as well. Two of them run an eco-village, one in Cameroon and one in Colombia. They live in an eco-village. The one from Cameroon had her parents killed at a very young age, and I don't know. I think that was the reason why she built an eco village, a safe space for women and children, you know, access to water and whatnot. And another one, she actually turns poop into energy, and she's working in parts of Africa to do that. So sanitation is an issue, and you know, she's gotten funds from the Bill Gates Foundation, for instance, to build these toilets, and to sort of rechannel the energy back to the villages that she works with. Now, my communities, like I said, would be the underdogs because I'm working very closely with small island countries. Small island countries, the one I mentioned earlier is Vanuatu. They are fairly large, I would say, in the Pacific region with 200 over 1,000, no, almost 300,000 people living there in I think 60 or 70 over little islands. The smaller ones that I work with are Tuvalu. Tuvalu has a population of 10,000. Then there's also Kiribati. Kiribati is also a very small, low-lying atoll country. And, you know, while I was in Madrid, I noticed that their voices are not heard, you know, when they're in a room full of like a delegation of 10 or 20 from other big industrial countries. Their voices pretty much become a whisper. And we intend to, at the next Conference of Parties in Glasgow this year, to have their voices heard. It's never been done before, but a side event on ecocide would be very good. So these are some of the communities that I help, and also like indigenous communities back home in Malaysia, for instance. They are not winning the war against big industrial timber companies that are cutting down pretty much the forest or their livelihoods or the places that they live. They are only winning little battles in administrative magistrate courts. And there they get close to no remediation, basically. And they would fight this over a span of like 10, 15 years and still at the end of the day get nothing that they were promised by, you know, putting their thumbprint on a piece of paper that gives away their land title. Yeah. Let's see. I think Sydney had a question about whether I feel threatened. At this point, I don't. I was a little bit worried about the article in Vogue. I didn't speak a word of Spanish at the studio, but as they were very busy setting up the studio for me, I could hear the word mafia come out, and I thought, oh no, they're gonna write about the mafia, they're gonna expose me. But no, I wasn't worried at all. I really think that there are many more people out there who are putting themselves on the front lines. I really hope, you know, to also be able to give them that sort of protection needed in order to make their voices heard. So again, communities, these are the underdogs that I want to work with, you know, Extinction Rebellion and indigenous communities. Yeah.
One of the other questions was, have you experienced any discrimination based on your gender?
I would say yes. I think I don't think it is exclusive to this line of work, but I would say that in my opinion, I think this line of work is quite male heavy. So we're talking about, you know, policymakers who are male, or decision makers at the highest level who are male. And sometimes as a female going into a room full of men, or going into a meeting that is to discuss, you know, law enforcement, police work, organized crime, terrorism, you know, it's not really a female strong industry. So if I come in assuming to be an expert or being introduced an expert, I feel, you know, sometimes that all eyes are on me as to like, okay, let's see what she's got, you know, and I feel a little bit of pressure to like prove myself. And also, you know, it's not nice to have that feeling, but if, you know, a bit more, you know how to compose yourself, how to speak to people, you know, the culture, you know how to approach them. But certainly I would think that if one needs to, you know, if you want to solidify yourself in your field, it sometimes is good to write a report here and there or two, or, you know, come up with certain opinion pieces, op-eds here and there, and yeah, and getting yourself heard, basically. or else they'll question, yeah, where are you from? Who do you know? And how'd you get there? And who are you? Yeah.
One of our students from last summer actually wants you to clarify a little bit more how your work's been going on making ecocide, elevating it to the status of a human right, and why it, again, maybe emphasize a little bit more why you think it's so important.
Yeah, so the crime of ecocide is basically the serious loss and destruction of ecosystems, including climate and cultural heritage. So we're talking like almost a breadth of things, right? But criminal law is very precise. So in working on this campaign to introduce the crime of ecocide at the International Criminal Court under the Rome Statute, we also need precision in the legal language itself, which is a work in progress, definitely, but we can go by a generally accepted definition of ecocide, right? And the work that we're doing is, at least my role is to connect with countries, especially small island countries, whose voices are not being heard on the international arena. And basically our pitch to them is that at the annual meetings of the International Criminal Court, you have an equal standing with with Canada, with the UK. You have equal standing to like Germany and other parts of the world. So you have a voice basically, and one vote from you counts for one vote from Germany. I emphasize this because in in the European Union, there are weighted votes. And weighted votes are votes that are reliant on the number of population or how strong your economy is, and that determines like how big a vote you get or how big of a percentage of the vote you get. And at the ICC, it's a simpler process, and basically all we need is 2/3 of the members of the court to vote for this crime to be considered. Then we have a crime of ecocide. Then we have a crime in place that's never been in place before, at par with genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crime of aggression, at par at that level, because there's really no crime in place to go after corporate elites, to go after political people, and the ICC was created to go after people who are, let's say, beyond the reaches of law. So the ICC says just because you're head of state, head of government, or hold a public title, it doesn't mean that you're immune to these types of crimes. You're immune to prosecution. So we find a very big advantage in introducing this crime. You need to have a crime in order to have a prosecution. You need to have a crime in order to have investigations. You need to have a crime in order to have the resources to make the investigations and the prosecution happen. So it's basically like almost like lining up your ducks. But the stuff that I'm working on deals with all these issues at either a separate level or as a whole. Yeah. Am I missing something, or did I lose my train of thoughts?
I think you got, how do you think climate change is, because I know that's one of your great concerns, how's climate change making this an even more important issue in your opinion? Obviously there's greater possibility for ecocide, but what do you see as some of the immediate effects?
So the working group that I'm working with right now on coming up with a definition of ecocide, eventually the definition of ecocide will be determined by, the countries, the member countries of the International Criminal Court anyways, but it's good to have like a solid base to go off. So climate crime is an issue. It's not a crime yet, but it can be equal to ecocide. Now, criminal law requires an act and also a mental element. So to prove that somebody is a criminal, you need to look into the mind, right? And the ICC prosecutes individuals. So we're talking about, again, individuals at the highest political level or corporate elites. And these people have time and time again hid beyond, the behind the screens of the corporate veil, either the corporate veil or just political immunity. And that shouldn't happen, right? That shouldn't happen. So the crime of ecocide will be able to go after these guys. Yeah. And if we're looking at climate change right now, if some of you don't know, it was already from the 70s that big oil and gas companies knew about the dire effects on the planet. They came out with reports by reputable scientists that warns them that if business goes on as usual, we're looking at sea level rise of this amount. We're looking at, carbon dioxide in the air of this amount. Their projection back in the 70s made by the scientists, it is scarily similar to the situation that we found ourselves in. Like last year, we hit 410 ppm of carbon, that's parts per million carbon in the atmosphere. And projections from that report in the 70s already, they projected this rise in carbon, and they've known this for a while. So if they've known this, you've established yourself a sort of like a criminal intent. And these documents were leaked just a couple of years ago. So Exxon and Chevron has been under the fire ever since by various NGOs. And, climate crime like this, at this level, by executives, knowing the science, going straight forward with business as usual, knowing the dire effects of, extreme weather events, sea level rise on people and population on the other side of the world or to their own people, is that not, a type of knowledge? So this type of knowledge should be used against people like that who, as I said, hide behind the corporate veil or hide behind their immunity. And they need to be accountable. Either the people in the country, the prosecutors in the country, are unable or unwilling. Only then can the ICC take over. But, in the meantime, there has to be some leeway for the people, the victims, the people who suffer the most. The Solomon Islands are already losing their they have 9, I think. Solomon Islands have already lost 6 of their islands, or 5 or 6 of their islands in the last years. And that's not good, because in small countries like that, they lack the resources to receive big amounts of people in their capitals, for instance. And believe you me, they want to stay. These people, they do not want to migrate to the nearest big country. No, they want to stay. They have a very strong bond with their island countries. And because their islands, they're not very strong economically. And to introduce a crime of ecocide would mean one day that companies, executives, or politicians can be brought to court, and whatever the court proves was profits of their crime can be used to be to repatriate and to pay back these people who have suffered, if you can prove that link, of course, which is a big challenge also.
We have a student who's asking what kind of organizations can an undergraduate student, so before they go to law school, what kind of organizations will accept them for an internship, whether paid or unpaid? What would you suggest if they want to get into an area like you've been working in, if they want to get into national law? Organizations at all in your head?
I know a number of organizations in the US that have championed environmental issues. We're talking about, like, because the first time weeks ago, symposium at UCLA. Over there, oh wait, my connection.
Shirleen, could you repeat that, because you broke up just a little bit?
Yeah, I said that there are a number of organizations, and when I was in the West Coast a couple of weeks ago, um, I noticed that Amazon Watch is in Oakland. Um, so Amazon Watch is a nonprofit that fights for the rights of the indigenous peoples in the Amazon, and they're going up against, big oil and gas mining, all these other companies coming in and killing their people basically, and they're raising awareness. So they are good organizations. They may be small. I really don't think that one should always aim for a big NGO. You can make a very big impact also with like, smaller NGOs. And from knowing one NGO, more NGOs. There's Conservation International, there's Forest. Let me see, the Rainforest Alliance, for instance. There's also the Office of the Convention for Biological Diversity in San Francisco. There are also sometimes, if you're very interested, there are like litigation or strategic litigation groups like Earth Justice who are usually looking for interns to do this or that. And, even if you lack a degree in law, I would say, get involved with as an intern in their communications department, as a social media somebody, or, deal with a little bit of research, prove that you can do research in this field and therefore that can be applied in the field of law or the environment. I mean, always come up with something, like even if the job description doesn't ask for it, they would usually ask for like CV and a cover letter, right? A resume and a cover letter. I would say always include like your best written essay or something that you're really, really proud of, just to prove that, okay, if this is a research position, this is what I've done in the past. Yeah, and I got a score of this or that, or I'm really proud of this work. Yeah, I think that helps. I think just a very simple Google, you would find quite a number of NGOs. The NRDC, I think it's the National Resources Defense Council. It's also based in San Francisco. Yeah, they're also doing great work. Yeah, Human Rights Watch, it's in New York. IUCN, there's so many things going on in the US. Yeah.
Okay. Looks like maybe it's our last question. Someone asked, in essence, do you have to be a student to do some of these jobs?
I don't think so.
If you
I
take a
don't think
gap
so.
year, would you be able to do these?
Yeah, I think so. I think a gap year is a very good reason to go do an internship, paid or unpaid. And it really depends on, sometimes the job description, they are very strict in saying, okay, you gotta be a law student or at the end of your study or have recently graduated. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. You you also have to think, around the psychology of a company or organization. Usually if they're looking for interns, it means that they are underhanded. So they are lacking, people. And basically, if you can you can prove yourself to be useful in that position, I think just go for it. I don't think it's necessary that you need to be in school. There are also a lot of people over here. I mean, job seeking is a big challenge these days. I even know people with like double masters and PhDs still doing an internship. It's a struggle, but it's basically, yeah, knowing what you're passionate about, what you think you can contribute creatively, the willingness to be open and learn about things that you're unfamiliar with. As an analogy, I just finished supervising a group of engineering students who were interested in the topic of ecocide. So we're talking chemical engineering, bioengineering, civil engineering. These were students who basically, I don't even know how they sought me out, but they found me on the internet and asked if I could help supervise their project on ecocide. And they are from Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which is in the US, but they made a field trip to New Zealand to understand the indigenous perspective on the need for about weeks just to, conduct field research and interview people, politicians, activists, yeah, just people on the street. So I really don't think it matters what your background is, whether you're a law student or not. It really is your interest. So I've been asked to write a recommendation letter for one of the students in this project, and yeah, I can say I was happy to do so for her. Yeah.
Well, I think we're about at time, but it sounds like what you're really saying, especially in this field, maybe more than other areas of law, that you almost have to create your own position in some ways. You have to be creative and innovative and be willing to think outside the box. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to you want to be a cookie cutter, you can be a cookie cutter. I mean, there's no harm in that. It's really like it all depends on your individual needs, your need to, make a mark somewhere or not make a mark, or, be a change in something and how you want that to happen, whether it be via law, but via inventing something or being somebody in a company. I mean, you can do just as much if you're in a business management role and you want to change the attitude of, the culture or the way the company does business. Yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Well, Shirleen, I see we're right at time. You are certainly someone who has led by example and you're making a change.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you for taking time to talk with us.
Thank you so much.
I know I saw some of the comments already. The students are saying that they really enjoyed it. The participants enjoyed it. So,
Great.
we hope that we can continue these talks in the future and
Mm-hmm.
maybe bring you back to Penn State. Shirleen has actually visited Penn State, gone to a
I
volleyball
have. Huge.
game, and had ice cream at the creamery. I don't remember what flavor you had, but
It was raining that day, I remember. Yes.
yes. So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you. Thank you, guys, students.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for coming, too. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Stay safe. Stay home. Bye.